Good afternoon, Council and Mayor. As to that issue, you have a criminal statute that makes it a crime to let the grass be more than 10 inches tall. Why don't you just cite the state? But I guess the law doesn't apply against the government, does it? If it was my yard, I'd be in court, you know. But no, as of yesterday in the paper, from what I understand, Lieutenant Powell was dismissed. Sergeant Hoskins is there's an investigation open, and the charges against Mr. Barr are still pending. Has there been any change since then? If not, I want to say that while it's a good start, what you've done so far, I'm very concerned about the fact that you still have a police officer, Sergeant Michael Hoskins, who participated in the arrest of Mr. Barr and who filed a false report. He fabricated claims against Mr. Barr that were not true. Now, he may have been following orders of his lieutenant to do an arrest, and I understand that will make it right, but I understand it. But nobody told him to lie, hopefully, on his report. And he told lies, including, I only quote 3, that Barr began to yell insults at myself and Lieutenant Powell and other officers at the scene, that Barr began to distract Lieutenant Powell and I from conducting our official police duty, that Barr refused to leave the scene after being ordered several times to do so. Well, of course, none of that happened. And my first question is, why hasn't this officer also been suspended pending investigation? When will there be criminal charges filed for the assault and the false arrest and the kidnapping that took place against an innocent citizen? And what are we to do? How are we to convince the citizens? I mean, here we have 2 police officers who fabricated charges against the citizen. And they did it knowing there was a film. And they did it in front of 6 other law enforcement officials. 6. I counted them. And that raises the question, if those 2 officers made false statements, did any of the other law enforcement make false statements? How will we know? Because you've refused to release those statements on the grounds of investigation. But my more serious concern about all this, and actually something that just made me sick when I realized it, is that it turns out that the city of Greenwood has an official policy. An official policy. You can ask your lawyer later the legal import of that phrase, official policy. You have an official policy of arresting citizens who insult or deride police officers. That's your official policy. Because in Lieutenant Powell's and in Sergeant Hoskins' reports, they cite the official policy. They quote from it verbatim. It's Ordinance 13-10. That says that you've passed an ordinance making it a crime, essentially, to vociferously criticize the police. Now, I thought when I saw that at first, I thought, it's just some old cranky law, and we just hadn't caught up with the times. Like Mr. Gregory said, it's one of those laws we need to clean out, because the Supreme Court's made it clear you can insult policemen, First Amendment and all that. Then I got to thinking, wonder when was that law passed? And I went and did some research. That law was part of a package of ordinances passed by the council, by the Board of Aldermen, on June 21st, 1963. June 21st, 1963. Let me read to you what the Commonwealth said about that city council meeting. The city council met this morning for just routine payment of bills. The council also adopted 2 ordinances drawn up by City Attorney Hardy Lott, making it unlawful to curse, insult, deride, ridicule, or use abusive language toward policemen, auxiliary policemen, and firemen engaged in proper performance of official duties. Also amending the present traffic ordinance so as to set forth the purposes for which streets and sidewalks are maintained by the city, and to make it unlawful for any person or persons, with certain exceptions, to parade or march or to sit, kneel, or recline, or to engage in public speaking, group shouting, or group singing, or to assemble in organized groups carrying signs on the sidewalks of the streets of the city of Greenwood. So what this is all about is this ordinance that's still the official policy of the city of Greenwood was part of a package of ordinances passed for the racist purpose of shutting down civil rights protests in our community. These people would be protesting, carrying signs, marching around the courthouse because they were not allowed to register to vote. And our city council or our board of aldermen passed a package of ordinances to make it a crime for them to do that. And on top of that, and this is the thing that just got me, to make it a crime to cry out in indignation against the police and the firemen when they use violence to shut down their political protest. Think about this. Why do you think the ordinance protects firemen? Because the firemen would come in with fire hoses and they would assault women and children and old men and young men who were doing nothing but peacefully protesting for their rights. They would assault them, and the police would assault them. And the police would drag people across asphalt roads by their arms. And they would use billy clubs against people. I don't know if they used dogs in Greenwood, but I'll tell you this. A couple of years ago, I had a former city official tell me that he loved it when they brought the fire hoses out. Ha, ha, ha. It was really funny. This ordinance that is still the official policy of Greenwood was passed so that when the fire hoses were used and the billy clubs were used, not only did it make a crime out of protesting, it made a crime out of protesting the violence by the police and by the firemen. And I'm going to tell you, when I realized this, it made me sick. This ordinance, and there's a couple of other ones that were in the package, is a filthy disgrace on our city. And I want to know why it is 52 years later that we still have this vile, wicked assault against civil liberties that's still on the books. It's still in the minute books. I brought copies of the newspaper article and of the original minute books to show that these ordinances were passed all in sequence on the same day, and they're still the law of the land in this community. It's still the official policy of the city of Greenwood because it's a criminal statute that's still on the books. And we have a policeman who relied upon that policy to arrest a citizen for not cursing or reviling, but making the mildest of protest for what he saw, rightly or wrongly, as some aspects of police misconduct. So what I'm asking is that this vile ordinance be repealed forthwith, and that this stain against the city and this horrible remembrance of what we used to do to people who are citizens who are trying to get their rights be banished from our law books, and that the police be trained that they can't rely on this old 52-year-old racist ordinance, even if the citizens don't show them the respect that they feel like they're entitled to. When I'm going to pass out these copies that I made.